Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Nichelle Polston and Mark Eichman. Watch repair is a specialized craft. It's also a way to give members of the military a chance to pick up a new civilian skill.
An $800,000 mistake means that if you're caught turning right on a red light camera in Wilmington, your ticket is forgiven. Was this something that everyone on City Council should have known about before the program was voided?
Need an excuse to think spring? Need an excuse to go to Lewis? We've got both answers wrapped up in one First experience. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
When battery-powered watches came out and later smartphones, many thought wind-up watches would go the way of the dinosaur. They were wrong. Turns out demand is skyrocketing, but there's a shortage of people who can actually fix them. In this week's First Look, we show you a watchmaking school exclusively for veterans, the first of its kind in the entire country.
Hundreds of teeny tiny pieces go into a single mechanical watch, each part with its own place to make the movement tick. A mechanical watch is powered by a really small spring and is usually pretty expensive. Think Rolex. The majority of watches sold today are quartz technology. That means they run on batteries.
In the 80s, there was a decline in mechanical watches. Quartz watches came into vogue and everybody was really interested in that.
As the demand for mechanicals took a nosedive, so did the need for professional watchmakers.
Then suddenly the pendulum began to swing the other way. And what happened is that the industry suddenly realized we don't have any watchmakers to fix all these mechanical watches that we're producing. And the demand for watchmaking is just incredible.
Sam Cannon is a master watchmaker. He says the main players in the watch industry are scrambling to set up their own schools to train watchmakers, but they're losing more to retirement or old age than they're graduating. Watchmaking is tough. The job entails a whole lot more than just swapping out parts.
They basically walk out of school as what's known as a micro machinist. Any part that they need, they can create from scratch, which is the hallmark of a watchmaker.
Trained as an instructor, Cannon came up with the idea to enlist veterans, particularly disabled vets, to become the next generation of watchmakers through his Veterans Watchmaker Initiative.
I kind of joke about saying if you have one eye and one arm and you have the heart to do this, to overcome, we can make you a watchmaker and you can make a good living no matter what.
The first class will train here, inside this old EMT base in Odessa, which Newcastle County is leasing to Cannon for $1 a year. There's still work to do, but most everything you see here has been donated or paid for by Cannon out of his own pocket. Eventually, Cannon plans to expand the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative, or VWI, to Middletown, where a local family donated 4 acres of land. Plans are to build a 28,000 square foot main campus there, where he says 54 students at a time will live, eat, and work. Army veteran Jason Adams can't wait. He's one of more than 350 veterans waiting for VWI to get off the ground.
I love seeing how things work, and the therapeutic side. I was reading about how it helps people with post-blast exposure. Just being able to clear their minds for that few moments is just a nice thing to have when you need it.
Adams retired from the Army in 2010 after he was found medically unfit. The Bear Native was injured in combat in Iraq.
I had a post-IED exposure, rockets, RPG. I had a traumatic brain injury, PTSD, some shrapnel wounds.
In addition to suffering chronic migraines and lower back pain, Adams struggles with depression and decision-making, even simple things like remembering to eat. He depends on his girlfriend and family day to day. With a lot of life yet to live, the 35-year-old is looking forward to reintegrating into society.
When I was in the military, you had like this purpose, this drive. You knew you were doing your part in the society, and now that I have all these disabilities, it's like, what can I do to once again be part of, our growing as a nation and society and all that together.
Just having everything ripped away from you in an instant is just terrible. We give you a skill set that takes you out of the Social Security realm and back into being gainfully employed. And you set your own course, no matter what your disability.
Air Force veteran Don Morton is also on the waiting list.
It's stupefying that we can let people die, get maimed, risk their life every day, and then not do anything for them. It's absurd. There should be a group like this in every town.
When the 44-year-old heard about VWI, he said, "Sign me up."
I've always liked watches since I was a little kid. Any machine, really, I'm into. And then I ended up getting one of my grandfather's watches that he had gotten from his great-grandfather, and it needed to be fixed, and I didn't trust anyone to fix it. So I said, I'm going to learn how to fix watches.
The idea of training veterans as watchmakers isn't new.
Disabled veterans learn the highly skilled trade of watchmaking.
After World War II, the Bulova family did the exact same thing. The American watchmakers opened the Bulova School of Watchmaking in 1945 in Woodside, Queens, New York. It closed in 1993.
We trained an entire generation of veterans as watchmakers. And it worked then and it works now.
There are 82% unemployment among disabled vets. 22 veterans commit suicide per day. And we need to get this place started, because every moment we miss is we're losing somebody.
Army veteran Rick Hoffman fell in love with the program instantly. The 71-year-old has signed up for the full 18-month course and also plans to teach his fellow vets jewelry repair here.
These people are powerful people. They are smart, they are intelligent, they are driven, and whether they have a physical issue or whether they are suffering from PTSD at some level, it doesn't make any difference, because they can learn and they can excel at this particular endeavor.
It's become my goal in life to do this. This is what's going to happen one way or another, or it'll kill me, to make this happen for these guys and gals, because they need this.
Piece by tiny piece, Morton will learn to make his grandfather's watch tick like new again. And piece by tiny piece, hundreds of veterans will learn to rebuild themselves.
Canon says so long as you are honorably discharged and can commit the time, you qualify to enroll in VWI. And Canon tells me more than 350 veterans are waiting for the school to open. Roughly 8 will likely be in the first class, the majority of whom, Mark, live locally.
And so these are very specialized skills. What's the job prospects for somebody who goes through this?
They're not bad. You know, I'm told from Canon that just from the Swiss watchmakers alone, they are seeing a 25% increase in luxury watch production every single year. Wow. So if you think about it, you graduate as a watchmaker, you can pretty much write your own ticket.
And they hope to open the school soon?
Yeah, Sam is trying to open soon. There are a couple of roadblocks there that he has to overcome. He's waiting on Artesian Water to hook up water to the site in Odessa, also for electrical groundwork to be done in Middletown. In the meantime, though, Canon is just getting the Odessa site ready to go.
And so how does the school sustain itself? How do they keep going?
The plan is that once the Middletown site opens, that the Odessa site is going to turn into this full-time service center, and then the graduates will do work there. That will be one revenue stream. Sam says that they are still going to be relying heavily on corporate, private donations, and then they will also seek out some grant money.
And all this education, all this training is completely free? Yeah,
completely free. Veterans will pay $0. Typical watchmaking course, I'm told, costs upwards of $250,000. Wow. So this is a big deal. Yeah. So they're not paying for that. They're not paying for meals or housing, which is the idea. If they do need housing in the interim, Rybold has donated trailers that can be used as a temporary dorm for now.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Shirley. And if you'd like to donate money or resources or even your time, you can go to veteranswatchmakerinitiative.org.
Coming up, Governor Carney has laid out a vision and a budget for the next year in Delaware. State of Play weighs in on how realistic that is. And tulips are associated with the Dutch, but the Dutch are also connected to Lewis. Experience the best of both later on First.
In January, the city of Wilmington suspended its right turn on red camera safety program after it discovered a piece of state legislation from 2016 legally allowed drivers to make such turns on a red light. The discovery cost the city $800,000 and caused one city council member to question city policy. Drivers caught on camera making a right turn on a red light was once prohibited in the city of Wilmington until a new law changed that. The change meant the city needed to refund over $800,000 in fines to drivers who were illegally cited after the piece of legislation passed.
The background on the whole episode is that we came in office and found out that we were collecting fines using our cameras and that had been prohibited by the General Assembly in the last session.
However, the news is upsetting to Wilmington City Council member Sam Guy, who says the slip-up should have never happened.
I feel bad because, this is serious to me. It's, really serious.
Guy says he learned of the mistake at the mayor's budget address in March, although Mike Przicki's administration caught the mistake 3 days after taking office.
We decided to repay those dollars. They tell me 90% of it's been refunded already.
The solution, according to Guy, is to create a committee of council members dedicated to keeping a close eye on legislation that could prevent such incidents from happening again.
It's not the issue that bothers me, it's the lack of knowledge on that issue and the whole realm of legal issues. All the members of City Council have been here since January, and there has not been one meeting where the law department gave a briefing to the whole city council about all of the major legal issues that the city's finding.
The mayor looks at the incident, though, from a different lens.
I think that this is like 20 other things that fall in that same category of things you just simply didn't expect, areas about which you've got no familiarity. It's just, there's so much to know in a $150 million budget plus a capital budget.
Meanwhile, Guy introduced legislation to form a committee similar to the one he created during his time on council in the past.
I used to have Judiciary Committee meetings when I was on City Council. I chaired the Judiciary Committee, and we had regular briefings from the law department about the legal affairs of the city of Wilmington.
We have people who watch what Dover passes all the time, so I don't think that's necessary.
Two things. First, drivers who received citations from July 2016 to January 11, 2017 were most affected and refunded after the city voided the right turn on red camera safety program. And lastly, Council President Hanifa Shabazz tells me Guy's legislation to create a committee was not substantiated and did not receive a sufficient amount of votes. Shabazz also added that in the past there was a need for such a committee, but only because the city had a municipal court, which no longer exists.
A newly confirmed Secretary of Delaware's Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, Shawn Garvin, joins me now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senate Republicans blocked the initial vote to confirm you in January when much of Governor Carney's cabinet was confirmed. Were you just as surprised as we were?
Well, I was surprised because I know my qualifications for the job and my abilities. Not surprised. I've been around long enough to know that there's a lot of other things that come into play.
Well, in your instance, the block happened because the Senate didn't have enough votes. A Senate Republican had to leave because of a family emergency. Do you think that was a coincidence, or was there politicking there?
You're really going to have to ask the Republican caucus to respond to that. I can't speak to motives, but it was what it was, and we worked through the process, and I'm just happy to be now confirmed and doing the work for the people of Delaware.
So in what forms are we going to start seeing changes in Delaware as a result of President Trump's executive order to sort of roll back some of these climate change regulations?
Well, I think it goes more than just rollback of climate change, and I've heard what the president's intention are and what the EPA administrators' intentions are, kind of different ways. Review, rolling back. Put on cars and light-duty trucks standards on hold, and a whole lot of other places. It's really kind of going back. The science is settled. Climate change is real. Human beings are having impact on it. We may be the last generation, the last time where we can make a difference in trying to change the path we're on.
But if the president doesn't see it that way, then
it's problematic. It's absolutely problematic. And you look at our state, the lowest lying state in the country, and the impacts we're already feeling. And Delaware has a very, very small part to play in the actual mitigation, relies on national leadership, and that national leadership has translated in the past administration into worldwide leadership. And so if the United States is backing, taking a step back from that, it's got global impacts that we may not be able to reverse.
Prior to heading up DENREC, you were high up in the ranks over at the EPA. You were an administrator for the region of the Mid-Atlantic.
Sure.
How closely does the EPA work with the state of Delaware and DENREC? I mean, now being both sides of it.
Right, extremely close. I mean, the whole idea is the state's the on-the-ground implementer of environmental and public health laws and regulations, and the work that and the partnership goes beyond just the regulatory side. It's education, it's communication, it's technical support, it's scientific, it's monitoring, it's a whole lot of things that really focuses on the mutual goal of protecting air, water, and our lands.
Do you see less of this sort of back and forth education and all these initiatives as a result of the proposed federal cuts? I mean, there were some deep cuts to the EPA proposed in the budget.
Proposed cuts. We'll have to see what Congress ultimately does as it relates to a 61% cut. Will have a dramatic impact on the state of Delaware and our ability to protect the people of the state. And so we'll have to see how that plays out.
So this is a lot more than just trying to do less, trying to do more with less. I mean,
yeah, and I never really bought into that the concept of doing more with less. The resources you have, there's only so much you can do with those resources. You can really look at ways you can be more efficient. I think what's critical, and I think that the state has been moving in that direction, is really how do we partnership better? How do we look across agencies and see where there's opportunity to leverage both activities and resources? How do we work with communities? How do we work with cities and counties? How do we work with businesses and environmental organizations to get to draw on all our resources to accomplish the goals that we really need to do for the people of Delaware.
Finally, first order of business for you as DENREC Secretary.
The big issues, kind of are easy to identify, but really spending time in the department to figure out all the other nuanced issues. There's incredibly talented people in the department who are doing incredible work, and there's value added, and so really learning the department. And then lastly, I'm venturing into getting the opportunity to do more on the natural resources side, which I met with employees and told them that their responsibility is to get me out from behind the desk and out into Delaware's environment to see all the great assets that the state has and all the great work that's going on. So multiple tracks, but I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, there are lots of beautiful places here for sure.
Absolutely.
DENREC Secretary Shawn Garvin, thank you so much for being our first person today.
We just heard some of the environmental philosophies of the Carney administration. Now let's get the rest of the story on State of Play. Here with us again is Steve Tanzer of DelawareLiberal.net. Steve, thanks for being here again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I don't know if John Carney ever went to door-to-door selling, but I'm betting there's a manual that says one of the number one rules is don't tell the people that they're going to hate what you're selling them. And that's basically been Governor Carney's pitch to lawmakers, certainly last week in his speech to the General Assembly, that you're not going to like this. Is that going to fly with lawmakers?
Well, yeah, I think he said there's something in this proposal for everybody to hate.
Right.
I don't know that that's necessarily the reason why legislators are going to question this budget, but I think there's going to be a lot of questioning. The budget essentially is almost an even 50-50 split of revenue enhancers and budget cuts. Ironically, when Jack Markell submitted his budget at the beginning of the year, it was more like 75 revenue enhancers, 25 budget cuts. So this legislation would raise less revenue and would occasion greater budget cuts. There's a lot of questions in the legislature about really almost the lack of the disinterest coming from this governor in terms of engaging. I don't think I've seen it with any other governor. I certainly haven't listened to this kind of feedback from legislators about this. I think what the big issue is going to be on the revenue side. What the governor has done or proposed is incremental increases for most brackets. Doing something, cutting some of the exemptions, those types of things, right. to raise some of the money. Also, an increase in the corporate tax, although less than others have proposed. I think it would raise only about $200,000. Others are saying it should be around $250 million a year. I'm sorry, $250,000. Right. And a lot of cuts. I mean, we're talking $37 million in cuts to direct aid to education. It looks like a bean counter's budget to me. And by that, what I mean is, when you say, I want you to cut 5% from your budget or 10% from your budget, there's no consideration given to, A, who has effectively been managing their money anyway, right. and B, what are the true priorities that we want as a state. I think you may well see finally, because again of sort of the vacuum, the power vacuum at the center of this administration, you may actually see a push for higher tax rates for the top earners in Delaware. There's legislation that's actually being considered this week, as we speak, that would create two new tax brackets, one at $125,000, one at $250,000. I believe that the $125,000 bracket would be 7.05%, and then the $250,000 bracket would be 7.8%. Keep in mind, going back to 1983, we had a tiered system. We actually had what most would call a progressive tax system, and the top rate was 11%. So this is hardly, an onerous imposition. What Carney has said is this is going to threaten the people who are, we want to be economically competitive, and somehow these rates would make us less economically competitive. I don't see how. To be honest with you. Ironically, guess which of the brackets is getting the largest percentage tax increase? How about 10,000 to 20,000, a 0.4%? Right. It's mostly 0.2 or 0.15 for the other brackets, but for some reason, 10 to 20,000 is getting a 0.4%. Now, maybe there's going to be some offset with deductions, but that doesn't seem fair to me.
And so you think because of what you see as sort of a kind of a lack of leadership from the governor, from what you're hearing from people in the General Assembly, that the General Assembly will have more of an impact on what the final budget looks like than a governor has in a long time? Yeah, I mean, Markell exerted quite a bit of pressure. I mean, he expected some kind of discipline from the legislators, but in Carney's case, what the feedback I'm getting is that there is a vacuum there, and someone's going to have to fill it. All right, so lots of changes to be had in the budget before the end of June. Let's move to some other issues. Sure. Legalizing recreational marijuana bill that was introduced last week. Do you see that happening? Is there enough support for that? I would love to think so. But in Delaware, I mean, look at the medical marijuana bill. Essentially, the dispensaries are run by ex-cops. And you've got an awful lot of ex-cops in that legislature. Right. Yes, I think it would be a revenue enhancer. I've been to Oregon, and I see it not in any way as detrimental. I see it as actually a plus for the economy. Colorado I haven't been to, but I mean, I would like to think it's possible. I know that there are national groups looking at Delaware because they believe that we are the next best hope for legalization. I just don't know with the people in the general. Again, especially no support from the governor either, really. I mean, either way. Yeah, I mean, Jack Markell said it would be become law over his dead body. Right. And then finally, one of the other big issues, death penalty being reinstated quickly. We got like 30 seconds. Yeah, the so-called Extreme Crimes Protection Act. I don't know why extreme crimes should be protected. Has been introduced by Steve Smith, another former cop, and it's. It could be a close call. I mean, you've got people, there may be enough votes. I don't know. We'll keep watching. Steve Tanzer of DelawareLiberal.net. Thanks so much for your insight. Appreciate it. We'll talk next time. My pleasure.
The weather has been cold, but spring is in the air. One sign of spring is the annual Lewis Tulip Festival. Now in its 8th year, the Tulip Festival is a unique way for Lewis to celebrate its origins. The town comes alive with all kinds of colors. It's a great excuse to take a trip and stroll around the streets of Lewis. It's also our first experience this week.
Welcome to Lewis, Delaware. This is the 8th annual Tulip Festival that we celebrate our Dutch heritage, and we hope you'll all come and enjoy our beautiful tulips. The Tulip Festival is an outgrowth of a project that we did in conjunction with the 375th anniversary of the celebration of the settlement of this town back in 2006. The first year, I think we planted about 7,000 tulips. We have about 20,000 tulips in the ground this year. So it really creates a wonderful welcome to spring and a great welcome to the community. They bloom over a period of 2 weeks. The festival runs from April 6th through the 15th. We hope you'll take time to come down and enjoy them. We have so many things that bloom in the spring, and it's a great way to get out and enjoy nature. And Lewis has the waterways and the gardens. It just is a great way to start the spring season. The community spirit that this has invoked is really my favorite part of the whole thing. Obviously the blooms are beautiful and I enjoy those a lot, but it's seeing the community come together around something that celebrates spring. I think everybody wants to get out and enjoy nature at this time of year. We've been cooped up for the winter, and this is a way to get out and enjoy what Mother Nature can provide.
It was still a little cold and cloudy the day we were in Lewis. Many of the tulips were still waiting for the sun before blooming. The flowers should be in full force, and the Tulip Festival is going on now through April 15th. Get more information online at lewischamber.com.
Next week on First, it's time to experience the arts and culture of the First State. The murals of Howard Pyle are coming together for the first time in decades. Check them out next week.
And that's First for this week. We thank you for watching. Speaking of culture, we leave you with the musicians from the Brandywine School District who are playing Carnegie Hall on Monday. This arrangement is Jupiter by 19th century composer Gustav Holst. For Nichelle Polston and Mark Eichman, I'm Shirley Min. Have a great week.